26101006 from my one right, cleared for takeoff.
One right, clear to go, yeah, 2
Cleared 4461, one right, line up and wait.
Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of FlightCast, the Infinite Flight podcast. I'm your host, Jason Rosewell, and as always, today we'll talk about the mobile flight simulator, Infinite Flight. If you love aviation but you've never heard of Infinite Flight, head over to the App Store on your iOS device or Google Play for Android and search for Infinite Flight. Links will be in the comments for this episode. Once in a while, something comes along that just grabs you. A great book you can't put down, a song, maybe that hole-in-the-wall restaurant that serves the best pad thai. One of those things that only gets better with time. And sometimes, it's a flight simulator. Only in this case, it's not just a flight simulator, it's a community of people who have come together for one thing, for one purpose. Without my next guests, none of this would be possible. They have taken their passion for flying, combined it with a passion for technology, and have shared it with the rest of us. FlightCast is thrilled to welcome to part one of our Infinite Flight developer series from Silicon Valley in California, Matt, Laban, and Philippe Rollin. Mathieu et Philippe, merci d'être sur le programme.
Thank you so much for having us.
Glad to be here.
How was the French?
It was
pretty good. Yeah.
You guys are being really kind. We've heard about the beginnings of Infinite Flight from a few different perspectives, so I think it makes sense just to start at the beginning with you guys. Let's start with a bit of background from each of you. Give us the quick version of your tech and aviation resume. Matt, let's start with you.
All right, so I grew up in France, in Lyon. It's just an hour west of Geneva, for those who don't know. And I started being interested in aviation around when I was like 10 something. And then at some point, my brother had his first computer, and he brought home a copy of Microsoft Flight Sim. I think it was like 4 or 5. And he actually never played it at all. I was the only one playing with it. So that kind of got me interested into aviation. Then I got my first computer, started coding a little bit, and got into flight simulation even more. And I think it was around like 1998, 99. I started selling scenery packages for Microsoft Flight Simulator. So you can still find some traces of that on the internet. I worked on Geneva 2000 and Polynesia 2000, and I think that was it. And that's what got me into the real aviation, because I met some people that took me flying, and then I got the bug of flying. And I used the money that I earned from this venture to get my license. So that was in 2000, 2001. And then I went to engineering school, started working on kind of like the flight simulator things. This is where Infinite Flight sort of got started. And then on the tech background, kind of like the engineering school I went, when I was done with the school in 2006, I moved to the US, worked for a big semiconductor company working on developer tools. So my background is more like into coding, like traditional coding and aviation. So flight simulator is really the thing I was supposed to be doing, I guess, with my life. So here's my kind of resume.
Okay, so and then at some point along the way, you've obtained your private pilot's license.
Yeah.
So did that happen in France, or did that happen in
That
the
happened
US?
in France, yeah. Before I started it was right after high school. I started flying the Robin DR400s, PA-28s, and then I got my license a year later, in August 2001. And then I kept flying as much as I could. And then when I moved to the US, part of the reason why I wanted to come here was for the aviation aspect, because it's just, even though it's nice in France, you still have a lot of GA, general aviation going. What happens here is just, orders of magnitudes bigger, and there's more planes, more airports. You're more free to do things. There's less restrictions. You can fly just right over San Francisco in your little, GA airplane. In France, there's no way you could go over Paris. You're restricted, far away. So that's the fun part of being here.
Great. So, Philippe, what about you?
So my story is a lot less interesting than Matt on the aviation side. I guess I have more of a story on the technology side, kind of like Matt. Started in the 90s with my first computer. Got interested into, played quite a bit of flight simulators. Started with the Falcon series at the time. It was more of a military simulator. Got interested also in Microsoft Flight Simulator, but I quickly realized that I was more interested into the virtual world that those games were. Those simulators were built around. So this is basically what got me to go to engineering school, where actually the same school than Matt, and at the end of that school, got a chance to have an internship in near San Francisco in the Silicon Valley for the same company where Matt and I met. That's we actually became good friends here and spent a lot of time together. And Matt was already working on his flight simulator project, and I was working on my end on some 3D engine and terrain rendering technology, and we decided to join forces to around the time when Microsoft announced the end of Microsoft Flight Simulator franchise, and that's how we started working together on Infinite Flight.
Awesome. So, Philippe, maybe while you're on it, maybe can you give us a glimpse of how things got started for the app? So we've learned that you're both from France. You both went to school together, although you're saying you didn't really know each other that well back then.
Yeah.
Came over to America, and how did the team grow? So it started out as the two of you, and then how did Infinite Flight or Flying Development Studio, I guess, come into being?
So as I said earlier, it just started as a lunch discussion. I mean, Matt, if you remember better than me, feel free to jump in. But it was mostly we started as a hobby. It's just let's see what we can do, and we actually started trying to. So when Microsoft decided to cancel or to stop the development of Microsoft Flight Simulator in 2009, if I recall correctly. We looked at it and we said, hey, let's see what we can do together. Matt already has some experience. Besides being a pilot, he has a lot of experience building a flight simulator already. I had more experience in the actual low-level 3D engine part of things, so the stuff that I could do while he was more focusing on the simulation part. So we started to work on it, and really quickly realized that it would be very complicated to try to compete in the flight simulator flight simulator industry on PC. So this is how we got to kind of pivot towards mobile, and it was only the two of us for a long time when we started. So we started in 2010, I think. September 2010 was probably the first line of code officially for Infinite Flight.
Yeah.
And we released our first version on Windows Phone. I think a lot of people today that downloaded Infinite Flight in the last couple of years don't know that. We started in Windows Phone, I think 7. That was our first version, because both of us were working at our job at the time a lot on the same technology that we're used to develop on Windows Phone. So we decided to go there first to get our mobile development experience first. And the goal was really to get something out as soon as possible. And actually Matt was really good at that, as pushing things towards and getting something in the market, and then iterating on it, like we've done for the past 4 years now.
So I just want to clear up for some listeners that are noticing on Facebook, the teaser image that I used for this has a Mac console screenshot in it. Matt wanted me to know very quickly that he's not developing on a Mac. So I said, well, shoot me a Windows console screenshot, and he said, no, just use it. But I thought I'd point that out because it can be a touchy subject, I guess.
The funny thing is that it's all the flight sim started like when I started initially 11 years ago. I got many comments from people saying, well, you're starting on Microsoft platforms, you're never going to be able to get out of those. You're going to be stuck to Windows. And it's funny because now we can run on all these platforms with the same, there's actually part of the code that's still running today that I did back then. Mostly for the only thing I think we kept from my original project is the flight model. The rest was basically entirely rewritten. And to add on to the how it got started, is the project for me, the initial starting point where I decided to code my flight sim was when I was in school, in engineering school. We were playing with those same kind of thing Philippe was doing, playing with physics engine, graphics engines, and just having fun with those things. And we were spending late nights coding, and then there was this technical demo of a physics engine that's called ODE that I was playing a lot with, and it was basically just a car on some kind of playground, and oftentimes you would just flip the car over on the back, and then the guy had coded a little feature. You could press a key, and the car would just flip over. It was just basically applying a force on the side of the car to just flip it over back on its wheels. And then I realized, what if I have more forces that make the car fly, and then what if I make those forces vary based on the angle of attack and the speed and all that stuff? It's how a plane flies. So this is basically how it got started, from just this sample of a physics engine with a car in it. This is how I got the the impulse to start doing that. So
that's great, and I actually want to touch more on that probably in our next chat that we have with you guys, because there's I imagine there's a lot we could chat about for all of the geeks that are listening and who would love it, on the physics and the airplane. I guess you used the word the rendering, I guess, or the model, airplane modeling.
Yep.
But Matt, your team isn't just the two of you, right? So now I know you might not be able to fully answer this question, but maybe can you give us an overview of who's on the FDS team at this point?
Okay, so there's Philippe and I. So we work on Philippe working on the low-level graphics engine, terrain engine, optimizations, and also he works on the websites, the forum, all the basically when you have domain names and stuff. I'm not a fan of doing those things, so he's just an expert now. And I work on the physics engine, live, the UI, and a bunch of other things here and there. We're most we also share things. There's things that I do, he's going to do, and then we have another developer in France who's working on special effects, rendering effects. So he's the guy who did the water, the new airplane rendering that just looks awesome. So the guy
is beautiful. Yeah,
he's working from his home in France, and he's working on something that's going to be even better, something that I've been craving to have for years. So stay tuned for more about that. And on this, the first person who joined the team with us maybe 2 years ago is David. David is our support guy, so he takes care of answering all the support emails. He organizes the events on live with Tyler. And we have Jarno, who is our 3D artist. He works. So David is in the Seattle area, and Jarno, the artist, is in Vancouver. He basically just designs all the cockpit models, the plane models, texturing, liveries, all that. And the last guy we got on the team, he's not actually full time, but he's more like a community manager. He's Tyler, and you guys know him. So he's taking care of all the ATC community aspect of the simulator.
Tyler's the infinite flight rock star.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, we're just really thankful for the team you guys have put together, and keep on building that, because it's awesome.
Thank you.
So I'd love to talk a little bit, at least, about what goes into airplane development, and all the stuff that goes along with that, like we've already mentioned. But maybe first, Philippe, there's been a lot of excitement around the release of the Airbus A320 for literally months.
Yeah.
I don't know how long it's been talked about, 6 months or something maybe? It's been a while now. But what has dictated the evolution of the infinite flight fleet, I guess, if you will?
Well, I mean, it's multiple factors. As we did from the very beginning, is getting really involved with the community and having our feedback, like a way for people to send us feedback. We honestly really look at all the feedback that I send. The thing is, we get so much that it's hard to kind of see exactly what people actually want, and what make the difference between what people want and what people need for a successful update. So we look at what's the most popular at one time. The problem is, when we start working on it, and we release it, that's like 6 months, sometime a year later, and at that point, it's not the most popular anymore. So people have to factor that in a little bit when they send requests. But so we look at it, and then it's also a matter of what type of reference material we have on those planes, because some aircraft, it's quite hard to have really accurate pictures of it. And like picture of the cockpit in many angles and good lighting conditions, so we can actually really model them properly. And there's a little bit of personal preferences as well, but this really factors in just minimally. It's really the community and what we put in place for them to send us what they want. I mean, that's what we've been doing. It's just we can't build 50 aircraft at the same time. It would be impossible. So people have to be a little bit patient if they want the aircraft they've been craving for a long time.
Sure. Now, are there airplanes that you kind of wish you could go back, now that you've done the A320 and you've done such a nice job on the well, first let me back up. The A320 was a redo, right? For the actual airplane modeling engine?
The 321s is the redo. We don't have the 320.
Yeah, we have a 321,
okay,
but we don't have a 320. This aircraft took a little bit longer to make, because we changed our process to create the aircraft, and especially the texture, to allow the type of rendering that came out with the new release, at least for the Android users for now. But at some point, we went down the road of one technology, and then we realized, it's not going to work for everybody. So we had to actually redo the entire cockpit. So this is what happened basically when we develop something. I mean, there's a lot of constraints because of the mobile space is so scattered. I mean, there's so many different devices that we have to account for all of those, and it's actually quite hard sometimes to even at the modeling part to do it right, so it look nice on all devices. So we have to do that.
So now hold on, you guys said that you don't have the A320, you've got the A321. But the A320 is the new airplane that's come out on Android, right?
Yes, correct.
Yeah. Okay. So is that the same? Maybe I'm not using the right terminology. Is that the same engine as the previous Airbus models, or is this something that's been redesigned?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Like in terms of the physics and all that kind of stuff, have you just modified something?
Matt can answer this, but better.
Yeah, the flight model of the 320 is drastically different from the one in the 321. The 321, I think, was created back in 2011, I think. I made a lot of improvements to the engine. Now we have gear drag. We have I forgot the name.
You've got ground effect on this
effect,
one.
Yeah, ground effect on this one as well. We have the Autoland. We also have weight and balance, and generally the flight models of the new airplanes are much closer to the real thing. In terms of if you set yourself into final approach configuration at a specific weight and the flaps out or whatever. Typically, the values that you're going to get in terms of speed, angle of attack, and all that is going to be they're going to be really close to the real thing because we get some feedback. We get some in the community. We got some great people who send us. We have a little questionnaire that I can send these guys and say, here's the data I need to make the flight model look nice and feel nice. So it's things like. What's the attitude on final approach with a specific weight when you're in cruise? What's the attitude of the plane? What's the N1? All that stuff. Basically, I use it to tweak the flight physics to make them look close to the real thing.
Okay. And are you operating out of manuals as well? Is it easy to get your hands on those?
I can't really comment on that because I would get some people into trouble. But
fair enough.
Yeah, I get some stuff online and. I also go like Wikipedia. There's a bunch of technical aviation forums where pilots, like airline pilots, interact and ask questions, like very technical questions about things like the flaps, the APU, all the very detailed stuff. So I grab some of the stuff from these pages. But yeah, sometimes I also get feedback from users, like from pilots, like, hey, this is not right. It feels like the drag is too strong when the gear's out or whatever. So there's a lot of tuning in that. And I often go back and modify the flight physics if they're really off.
Okay. Well, and you've got some great resources right in our community. Like one of my guests was Arnaud, who's flying for a major international airline who's flying the A380. So that's got to be a huge advantage for you.
He's him, Melvin, these guys are like key people in the designing of every flight model because they know things and they can get in touch with people that fly the planes that we model because they have pilot friends and they can just like send them the questionnaire and they can answer as much as they can, and then I start modifying the flight model based on their answers. So yeah, definitely the community helps a lot.
So getting back to the A320 a little bit, because this is the big news right now, and I should say to our audience, it's not really a coincidence that these guys are here chatting with me now, because the A320 may or may not be out on all flat platforms by the time this airs, but I wanted to try and line these guys up for an interview, and they were gracious enough to be able to do it now. So Matt, with the A320 release, overall, how happy are you with it? How it turned out?
So far, I'm pretty happy because there's been a great deal of feedback on the rendering. I can see the screenshots on IFFG where people focus on all the new reflections and all the new rendering that we've added. So I'm pretty happy, and there hasn't been any negative comment about what we've done so far, like the physics or anything. So I'm pretty happy, and I can't wait for the iOS guys to try it because the audience on iOS is much bigger. So I can't wait for them to try it out.
Yeah, I've noticed that the feedback for the most part is actually pretty constructive on IFFG and some of the other Facebook groups. Like there seems to be a extra piece of landing gear on the right hand side than the left hand side or something, but it's all very, very positive.
Yeah, actually, when we post screenshots on the Infinite Flight Facebook page, there's actually a couple that we modified. I think the JetBlue one, I used the wrong. That's like maybe a few months back. I used the wrong type of engine. I think it was a CFM or
I noticed that post, yeah.
And it was like people commented like, "Hey, it's not the right type of engine. Or this one doesn't have sharklets. So this one, the registration you used for this one doesn't actually have sharklets yet." Or there's lots of comments on these things. It's these guys know everything. They notice everything.
It's true. It's true. The engine comment blew my mind. I couldn't believe that somebody noticed that. That's way beyond anything that I would ever notice.
And it has changed, because I remember like when we first added that engine type change, that was for the 757, and we posted a picture on Facebook, and some guy was like, yeah, what the hell, it's not the right type of engine, you guys blah 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 blah. So I'm like, all right, fine. I told Jarno, like, can you just design both models, and then we'll switch it on the fly based on the livery. So I was all proud to post a picture of another airplane that used a different type of engine, expecting a comment like, oh my God, you guys added that. And no one pointed at that. It was like, really? Okay, well, it's coded.
Complainers are usually more vocal than people that like.
It's true.
But it's okay. I mean, it's part of it. It's part of it's part of the game.
So and sorry, Philippe. Well, I'm going to get back to you, but and actually, this can be for both. But it seems like Matt's done most of the work on the flight physics and on the new airplane model. So, what have been some of the biggest challenges you faced with designing the 320?
Well, it hasn't been much different from the other ones. Actually, it's getting easier now, because we have most of the kind of like the basic. I have something to start with, basically. I can just take the 737 and modify the weights, the wing shape, all that stuff to make it feel like a 320. Okay. So it's actually much easier now that we have all these types, these categories, classes of airplanes. It's easier for me to just start from these. But it's been, I think the challenges have mostly been technical with the rendering, because we told Jarno we want a cockpit that's much higher definition. And then the guy in France also had to spend a lot of time designing the new shaders to make them work on, your old phones and the latest iPhone and iPad. So it's been mostly, the challenge has been mostly learning this new technique of rendering for the 320.
Awesome. So before we leave the A320, have you any hints for us as to what might be coming up next because of the A320 release?
Well, I
know you've got to be careful with these questions.
Yeah, we have just like everything we write is set in stone in the minds of other people. So now we have people. I think people know the way we work. Usually, we just don't ship the 320. We ship other ones, and I think some people have deciphered the clues that I've left in my Instagram posts. Of the types of airplane. I think pretty much everybody knows. I think there's only one that I haven't posted yet, but everyone knows what it is. So yeah, and so that's basically, we're going to complete the whole collection in terms of that series of airplanes.
Looks exciting. It's awesome. So you guys heard it. If you want clues, you should follow Matt on Instagram. Philippe, are you on Instagram too?
No, I am not.
Okay, well.
We'll
forget about you then. So, Philippe, let's talk a bit about what goes into testing. Mobile testing of flight simulator, when you have to deal with so many types of processors and different amounts of memory and all kinds of stuff that goes. You said, it's just a smattering of stuff that you've got to deal with. So, I picture somebody in a dark room just swapping devices and software versions constantly. And so, how does it work?
Well, since we're a small team and we don't have a unlimited budget, we do have to focus on the most common. What we do is we look at what device are the most common, and we make sure to test on those. And then, we try to do a little bit. I mean, we have a beta testing team that's very helpful, and then what we do is we iterate. I mean, we release as early as we can. We possibly can when we think there's no major issue, and then we see what problems come at us, because trying to plan for every single problem, especially all the GPU, CPU, memory issues that comes, it's really hard to do it in advance. It's starting to be like more services. I mean, this is I guess I'm not going to expand on this too much because this is more for another talk, more nerdy talk. There's some services online where you can send your app and they will do some automated testing on it. We're looking at those to try to catch a little bit more errors quicker. But it's a process, and there's a lot of people that seem to not. I mean, they don't see everything that's involved into each release, and it's not just putting a new plane and new scenery and new feature. It's the whole release process is very painful, and yeah, there's more that meets the eye. That's for sure.
So you mentioned the beta testing crew. Matt, how important is your beta group when you're doing game development?
Oh, extremely, because there's always things that the flight sim is like 4 years old now, so it's very difficult to test everything we've added, every time we make a change. So it's great to be able to just deploy that, deploy a version to 100 people, and then they're going to test their things and their way of doing things. And sometimes it comes up, there's something that we changed, like when I change something, like, well, I'm going to change that, and then it impacts something on a completely different side of the sim, and I didn't test it because it would take too much time. So that's why we kind of rely on the users on the beta testers to go and check things for us. So it's very valuable. But we get a lot of requests for people to join the team as beta tester. The problem is we can't accept everybody, and sometimes we need people that we need special types of people. There's some guys that when you don't really speak English that well, it's going to be difficult for us to tell you exactly what to do to repro an issue. So we kind of need people that are kind of like tech savvy a little bit, that can understand. Because sometimes, we get reports of people saying like, okay, so I did this, that, and then after like half an hour flight, I did this and it crashed. So you get the complex repro to do the whole thing, and then you're like, wait a minute, what if I just do the last step? Does it crash or not? And it's like, well, it crashes. Like, then why do you give me all these steps? Just tell me that. Try to find the shortest path to the crash, basically. And so we need people that can understand these kinds of things, and sometimes it's difficult. But the team we have now is pretty great. I mean, we get a lot of really good feedback and about many issues, and I'm pretty happy with the guys.
I think that's something we can emphasize here is if anybody has an issue at some point, giving us like a very simple explain me like I'm 5 type of steps to reproduce the issue will really tremendously help us to fix it very, very fast.
Okay, and what's the best method for them to do that if they're not on the beta team?
Well, I mean, on the beta team, there's on the forum, there's a special category for them. But even somebody who's not on the beta team, and they see and they can reproduce an issue, and they come up with a very simple, very well written list of steps for us to fix the issue. It will help. They can just post it on the support or bug. I think there's a bug section in the community forum, and it's actually a great way. If after a few bugs that you report like this, if we see that you report like really, really good, you do a very nice reports, then there's a good chance that we'll ask you to join the team, because we definitely need those.
Great. So there you go, guys. If you are looking to join the beta team, be helpful first, and that might be a good first step. Guys, let's just pause for a quick break with Cam. We'll be right back. Hey, Cam, it'd be great?
What's that, Jason?
If there was an app I could use along with Infinite Flight. Something I could use to track and share my flights, or check out where the action is before starting some ATC work.
Well, I actually happen to create something that does all of that.
Really?
Really. Head over to lifeflightapp.com, where you can track flights in Infinite Flight live in real time, view stats about your flight, and learn more about pilots and controllers around you.
Cam, I have a confession to make. I knew all of that. I was just testing you.
Well, anytime you'd like me to come by for another test, just let me know.
Thanks, Cam. In the meantime, everybody, why don't you head over to liveflightapp.com for your next flight. Now back to the podcast. Philippe, you just released a new members area of the website. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. This member area that's on account.infinite-flight.com, this is basically a way for people who are interested in Infinite Flight Live to see their stats and also renew or even purchase. If you don't have Infinite Flight Live already, you can go there with a Google or Facebook account and create an Infinite Flight Live account and basically purchase a subscription directly from that website. This is a first step into a more cohesive website for Infinite Flight, because through the years, me and Matt, we're both engineers, and we spend most of our time trying to improve Infinite Flight itself. We're not really web designers, and we've had different websites, one for feedback and one a blog, and now a community forum, and they kind of all over the place. So we're trying to have one place where Infinite Flight fans can come and sign in and look at their account, and the future is we intend to make it more interesting for people to go in this website, have more functionalities in there. But it's a little bit too early to talk about this at this point. But it's definitely something to keep an eye on in the future for a new online experience for Infinite Flight.
Sounds like you might need a web developer.
Yeah,
I'll just let that hang out there. So for either of you, there are some requests that, for goodness sakes, they're made over and over and over and over, that people just seem to crave for realism and for other reasons. Not the least of which are 3D buildings, landing smoke, weather, which you guys have kind of implemented already, but things like rain or snow, and international flights is another big one. Of course, people want every livery known to man. But can you guys talk about some of the challenges in adding those features?
Sure. I'll take a stab at it. We get the 3D building, landing smoke, weather like every single day, probably like 50 times a day. Simple answer there is that it's at least for 3D buildings, the main issue is access to good data, because Infinite Flight uses like real maps, and having accurate 3D building data is quite hard. It's getting easier. I think now it's a lot easier than a couple of years ago. We could indeed have airport models. We've looked into this. People that have been following our Facebook can see that we've done some tests, some experiments with buildings in the past. I think it's time, and we're building we're putting all the little different parts that are required for this, and instead of not having an update for 3 years and coming up with like 3D buildings and that's it, we'd rather do many small updates with content and new live features, and instead of focusing on one big feature like 3D building that will require a lot of time to implement properly.
Okay. Do device models and resources play into that at all?
It does. It does. When we tested it on PC, where we do most of our development, and it required quite a bit of performance. And it's not the only reason. It's feasible if we both go at it like full time. We can probably get like 3D buildings pretty quickly. But at some point last year, when we decided to go with live, this was kind of our focus. 3D buildings, we can always add this at some point. It's just a matter of really putting all our energy to it. For live, it requires a lot of experience to have the right to offer the right experience, actually. And we decided to really focus on our community more than just eye candy stuff. And we understand that it's really important to have those things for the in-game experience. But we feel that the multiplayer ATC experience is far outweigh those things for now, at least.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Not that people necessarily want my opinion here, but they're going to get it because I'm the podcaster. So, I'd rather have an airplane that flies properly than some 3D buildings that could potentially cause some more lag, or that don't look right at all angles, or even landing smoke. I can just imagine. I haven't talked to you guys about this, but it's not just a matter of spewing out some smoke from the tires when you land. There's things like wingtip vortices and all kinds of stuff that happen with that smoke, right? So I'd rather that be accurate, and you guys take the time that it needs to go into it. But,
yeah, I mean,
again, that's just my opinion.
I think the last thing I can say on this is Infinite Flight has been around for now 4 years, and we started with very, very low power, very low memory type of devices. So we build things in a certain way, and it takes us some time to go back and change those core things that we built at the time that don't really support some of those new features. And I mean, I think it's pretty much true for any software when there's a new feature that you want to add, and sometimes you have to change a lot of things, and all those things actually are pretty much connected, and there's a lot of underlying work to do that we are doing with each update. I mean, with each update, there's a lot of things that you don't see that we do to actually facilitate the 3D buildings, smoke, and international flights. But it's a step-by-step process, and we really have to focus on each update on what can we do in that 3-month or 4-month window to advance a little bit, but at the same time also offer new feature and new content for that release.
And you've touched on international flight a little bit, and I haven't planned on asking this question, but just as you're talking, I'm wondering, in a region like California, maybe, would it be easier to maybe make connect regions that are in the same area rather than focusing completely on international?
Well,
is there any difference there?
No, it's once we connect, that means that we solve the issue. I mean, we know what issues we have with this, and we're fixing it slowly. But it's the same. Those are the same issues. So once you can fly from San Francisco to LA, then that means that we can do international flights.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, guys, so I don't, like I said, I don't want to take up too much time on this one because I want to have you guys back and we'll get into some of the nitty-gritty stuff. But we've had, as you can imagine, a huge response on the FlightCast Facebook page with user and fan questions. So people, I apologize if we don't get to your question. We won't even be able to come close today. But we'll do a few here, and we'll see if we can get a few answers, and we'll try and get to your question next time. So here we go. I had one really good one from Henrik, who was asking, over the years, what has been your biggest breakthrough in Infinite Flight? So what he's asking, what really stands out as maybe a milestone moment for you guys?
I'd say the community, because that's been what surprised us the most, the engagement of all the users around Infinite Flight, and it has really taken off like crazy since Live came out, because people were already interacting together. They were creating they were even flying together when they were not seeing each other, playing on their own. Yeah. But now they can see each other. They can, it's taken the whole thing to a new level. And I think even with ATC for the past 4 months, for maybe 6 months that it's been out, the response has been absolutely awesome. we get, we have a lot of controllers. People are really interested in all that, and there's this, the whole community aspect around it is pretty much the thing that surprises the most, I think, at this point. This for me.
So would it be safe to say that it's grown to be bigger than you had hoped, or bigger than you thought it might?
I always thought there would be some following, and I think there's, when we started the port to iOS, one thing we did that I think was some kind of like a winning strategy kind of thing was just posting early and generating interest before the game comes out. That's something that we did. I think around like the first video we put out was, I think, in November 2011. And it got a lot of views. People were like, okay, so there's a new contender now. There's someone else coming on this platform. And then when we released, there was a lot of interest, and then community started building. But I think it's definitely something that turned out to be much bigger than I thought, at least for me. And I think both of us are just surprised and really happy with how it turned out.
Awesome. So Arnaud's wondering if either of you guys had ever thought of becoming professional pilots.
Well, I guess I'll start. Not really. I think it boils down to the interests. So if you're a pilot like Arnaud is, it's difficult to, if you have two passions, flying and computer science, it's difficult to do both if you're a pilot, because it takes a lot of your time. It's very, very intensive kind of thing. Whereas if you're an engineer, then you have a lot of spare time to fly for fun. So I guess this was more like the way I saw things. And also in France, there's a lot of, I guess I was kind of turned down from it, because there's this sort of myth that was entertained, like when I was young. It's like, if you're not good at math, you can't be a pilot. And
I've heard that too here.
Yeah, and I was kind of like, well, you know what, I'm not that great at math, because mostly the way it was taught, it's just not how I see things. Even though I use all these things now in the flight model, I just didn't understand them back when I was in school. So I kind of was like, well, you know what, forget it. I'm not going to be able to do it. So I kind of went to the engineering side, and I guess I prefer it this way, because I can just go fly for fun, and there's no constraints in just my type of flying, I guess.
Awesome. How about you, Philippe?
Well, my response here is going to be half of Matt. I mean, I'm kind of on the same line here, where I feel like as an engineer, you can kind of touch so many different things more easily. You can, since we started Infinite Flight, we've learned. I've learned so many things about aviation. Like I can tell you every single markings, for example, the markings on the airport, like what each marking means, and their actual specification, and all the different type of lighting that they can be for an approach. So I don't know. I mean, it's for me. I feel you get to learn so much as an engineer, and still have the opportunity to touch those things. And I don't. I mean, I'm not a pilot at this point, but this is not something that I completely discarded. This. I mean, I'm still interested in getting my license at some point. But yeah, becoming a pilot, it seems to be such a huge commitment, and which would probably completely overlap on my engineering passion at this point.
So, Philippe, how's Matt as a pilot?
I was very safe, actually. Very, very safe. At least when I'm there, because otherwise he's getting in trouble.
You don't try to make him barf in the airplane, Matt?
No, he's
he doesn't.
There's some people that try to do things, like to just fly around and do some maneuvers. But it's only when they request it. If you're not really into it, it's just like
taking off like a couple of times. That was pretty fun.
You're very kind, Matt.
There's a couple of reasons. It's like I don't want to clean up the airplane afterwards. If anything goes wrong, we have like barf bags in the plane, but it's just like I'd rather not have to deal with this. And also, I don't want to turn people away, because it could be like, if it's their first experience, I just don't want them
You could
to
make
be
it their last experience.
Yeah, I don't want them to be disgusted and be like, oh, well, this is not for me, it's too scary. Or I'd rather just be like a sightseeing tour, and then I'll do all the crazy stuff and maneuvers with friends that really want to do it.
Well, when I come to visit, you can certainly do some crazy stuff with me.
All right then. When are you coming?
I don't know. All right, so let's move on. Tristan and a few others, including myself, have joked and sarcastically mused, I guess, about you guys making the A320 free. Of course, it's not free, and others are constantly asking for you to make the game free. This is a really good chance, I think, to just clear the airways a little bit. We know that free games do come at a price, which is usually advertising. So maybe can you tell us why you don't go the advertising route, and why isn't Infinite Flight free?
Well, I can take a stab at this one. It was actually a very hard decision when we started. For us, the pricing was a way to at the very beginning again was a way to make sure that the people that get the game actually understand what a flight simulator is. That there's some sort of commitment that they're not going to just consume Infinite Flight the same way you would consume any other free game. So that they spend the time to understand, and maybe if they have something to say, actually, you get more feedback if it's a game that you have to pay for. You're going to hear about all the issues that your game has for sure. So it gave us the opportunity to really see early on what we were doing wrong.
So it makes people feel like they're invested in it.
Yeah, it's really not. I mean, honestly, the goal, we built this simulator because we wanted to do something different. We don't pretend to make the best, the best simulator out there, but it's the best for us, and we hope that other people think that way. But yeah, we don't. It's everything costs money. It's hard. It's a hard question because we want more people to play Infinite Flight. We would love to make it cheaper or free, maybe, but it's a smaller audience than that a lot of other games out there. You have to consider that. So it's important for us to have some revenues to be able to continue and pay all the people that we hire.
On behalf of all the happy customers, I would like to say that we're happy to pay it, and it's a lot of fun for us. And I think it goes with flight simulators are a funny thing because you tell the average person that you play a mobile flight simulator on your phone literally for hours on end, and you can. It's not the coolest thing sometimes, I think. we're playing to a pretty specific audience here. Mm-hmm. But, I think you're right. It's an investment for us. And when it's an investment for somebody, it makes them, it keeps them passionate about it. I don't want to see my hard-earned money go down the toilet, which pushes you guys, and I think it pushes us to be better air traffic controllers and better pilots, and it gives a lot of us that chance to just be in that world where normally we wouldn't have a chance.
I mean, honestly, we have every single release that we have. There is the price matter that comes, and we don't sit here and try to. I mean, we see a lot of comments about this, like people, make it free. You're scamming or whatnot. There's a few people that say this on the reviews, but we really don't try to sell our airplane like without people knowing. Like other game, you buy coins and you don't really know what you're getting, and it's what they call it. It's a pay to win type of games.
Yeah.
We try to stay away from this. It's very upfront. you pay for a plane, you pay for live, and that's it. I mean, we're very, very upfront with all our pricing model, and we try all the time to be fair with what it costs us and how much we sell it for.
Great. At one point, you guys put out the question online of who would want to see Infinite Flight as a desktop app. And so Nick is wondering on Facebook if you're planning to release the PC version at some point. Where's that gone?
So we're, as people know, we have a desktop version that's working on Windows, and it's because it's easy for us to make it work. Basically, most of the development is actually done on the PC, on the PC version, and then when it's ready, we just make it available to mobile phones and send it to testers. But most of the stuff is done on PC because the development environment is better for us, at least. And in terms of the PC version, like Philippe was mentioning, the new website where you can purchase your subscription from us directly is kind of geared toward this. It's same for the joystick. There's a bunch of other things that we've added that are specifically to advance progress onto a shippable PC version, because now it's kind of like rough around the corners. You can't really set it to full screen. There's a bunch of other things that are missing to make it a usable desktop simulator. And there's also we don't have an installer and all that.
What we often say in software is like the last 10% takes 90% of the time, and that's why I was talking earlier about the release process. Is usually all those little details that you don't think about that we need to put in place every time we want to address a new platform.
Okay.
Yeah. So we can't like all the ways we can't announce a specific date, but it's definitely something we want to try in the future.
Okay. Will you port it to Mac as well? Would that be something that's easily transferable, or is that a whole new animal?
It's probably doable, but it's going to take more time because we have to add support for joystick, and we have to understand a little bit more the platform. Okay. But I think the library we're using to render and create the windows and all that, I think it technically works on Mac, so it's something that we can consider. But the PC version is definitely going to be coming before the Mac version.
Okay. Well, I'll just slam you on Facebook every week until you launch it. Guys, is there anything else that you'd like to add before we let you go today?
The only thing I would say is, like, if you really enjoy Infinite Flight, don't forget to rate it and review it on your app store. I mean, we try not to say this too much. I mean, we want honest critique. If you have any type of feedback, it's always great. I mean, come on the community forums as well. I mean, there's a great team of moderators. We hang out there all the time. If you have anything to say, I mean, there's a good chance that if you post it there, we're gonna see it. So yeah, that's all. If you like it, rate it. Come talk to us. We're pretty approachable. That's all.
Yeah. And also probably just thank you to everybody in the community for doing what they're doing, because it's
and thank you, Jason, for this. I mean, the podcast is really is really a great relief to us, like to listen to it once in a while, to kind of hear all the great thing the community is building and saying about Infinite Flight.
Oh, it's my pleasure, guys. It's a ton of fun. Well, Matt and Philippe, thank you so much for joining me today on the podcast. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you.
Merci.
It's been a huge treat, and I'm really excited for our next chat. So thanks again for being here.
Right.
Thank you.
Bye.
That was Matt Laban and Philippe Rollin, Infinite Flight developers from Flying Development Studio. Both guys joined me on Skype from San Francisco, California. Keep listening to FlightCast to find out when our developer series will continue. Thanks as always for listening. If you haven't already, head over to the App Store or Google Play and download Infinite Flight. For more FlightCast, visit flightcast.audio and be sure to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes and leave us a great review. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/FlightCastAudio and on Twitter at FlightCastAudio. If you have any ideas for FlightCast, please leave them in the comments. FlightCast is brought to you by Linkhouse Media on the web at linkhousemedia.com. Guys, podcasting takes money, and so if you have a few extra bucks, we would love it if you would consider donating to help keep us going strong. To donate, visit flightcast.audio and click on the yellow PayPal link in the sidebar. To cover the fine print, FlightCast is not affiliated with Infinite Flight or Flying Development Studio. I'm Jason Rosewell. Thanks for listening, and happy landings. So Matt, I was focusing on the noise from that microphone. Did he say he's a pilot, or
No,
did he mention
he
that?
didn't. He's not a pilot.
Oh, he's not. Okay.
I've tried to get him interested, but as soon as I bank the plane more than 25 degrees, he's like, let's go back to the ground. So
That's not true.
Sounds like David.
That's not true.
okay, 30 degrees maybe.
You're getting better.